The air in Amsterdam smelled of salt and tulips in the winter of 1636. Men in dark wool coats gathered in taverns, not to drink, but to trade. They carried no gold, no silver, just scraps of paper with names written in ink, names of flowers. A single bulb, still buried in frozen earth, could buy a house, not a modest house, a grand one, with servants, with land. This was trading before stock tickers, before computers, before anything we would recognize as modern finance. But the fear was exactly the same. The Dutch Republic was the richest nation on earth. Their ships controlled the spice routes. Their banks financed kingdoms. Amsterdam was the center of everything that mattered in global commerce. And in the middle of this wealth, people discovered something strange. Tulips, imported from the Ottoman Empire decades earlier, had become an obsession. Not because they were useful, because they were beautiful, because they were rare, because everyone wanted them. Trading in tulip bulbs started simply enough. A merchant would buy bulbs from a grower, wait for them to bloom, then sell the flowers. But somewhere along the way, the trading changed. People stopped waiting for the flowers. They started trading the bulbs themselves. Then they started trading contracts for bulbs that hadn't even been harvested yet. Paper promises. Future deliveries. The actual flower became irrelevant. What mattered was the price, and the price kept rising. Every week, the prices climbed higher. A skilled craftsman earned maybe 300 guilders a year. A single rare tulip bulb sold for 3,000, then 5,000, then 10,000. People mortgaged their homes. They sold their businesses. They borrowed money from anyone who would lend it. Bakers, weavers, carpenters, men who had never thought about trading before, suddenly became traders. The taverns filled with them every day, shouting prices, making deals, counting their paper fortunes. The mechanics of this trading system were primitive but effective. Since the bulbs were underground, you couldn't actually hand them over during most of the year. So traders used a system of contracts and college money, essentially futures trading, with handshakes and written promises. You could buy a bulb in December for delivery in June, then sell that same contract to someone else in January, never touching the actual bulb, never even seeing it. Pure speculation. The profits existed only on paper, but people treated them as real as gold. Nobody questioned whether this made sense. When your neighbor bought a contract for 50 guilders and sold it 2 weeks later for 200, you didn't ask questions. You found your own bulbs to trade. The fear of missing out overpowered the fear of losing everything. Every day you waited was a day of potential profit lost. Every conversation was about tulips. Every dream was calculated in guilders. There were warnings. A few merchants, older men who had seen other manias, other bubbles, spoke quietly about the danger. They pointed out the obvious. A flower cannot be worth more than a house. A piece of paper promising a flower cannot be worth more than a ship. But their voices were drowned out by the sound of money being made, or at least the illusion of money being made. The people who warned against the trading were called cowards, fools, men too scared to seize opportunity. By early 1637, the trading had reached a fever pitch. Some bulbs were changing hands 4 or 5 times in a single day, each time at a higher price. The entire economy of the wealthiest city in the world had reorganized itself around colored flowers. It had become a game that everyone believed they could win. The fear that should have existed, the natural human fear of losing everything, had been temporarily deleted by greed and social proof. If everyone is doing it, how dangerous could it be? The collapse came suddenly, as collapses always do. In February 1637, at a routine tulip auction in Haarlem, something changed. A seller offered a lot of bulbs at standard prices, prices that had been acceptable just days before. Nobody bid. The auctioneer lowered the price. Still nothing. He lowered it again. Silence. Fear had entered the room. Word spread through the trading networks instantly. By the next day, bulb prices had fallen by half. Within a week, they had fallen by 90%. People who owned contracts worth thousands of guilders found them suddenly worthless. The men they owed money to came demanding payment. But there was no money. There had never been real money, just an agreement that the prices would keep rising forever. When that agreement broke, everything broke. The men trading tulip bulbs in Amsterdam couldn't see their own madness until it was over. They couldn't recognize the bubble they were creating. To them, in that moment, the trading made perfect sense. Everyone was doing it. Everyone was profiting. The fear of stopping seemed far greater than the fear of continuing. When we look back at them now, their behavior seems absurd. Flowers for houses? Obviously unsustainable. But they lived inside that bubble. They couldn't see it from outside. We have the same blindness. When we're inside a trading mania, when we're part of the crowd, when the prices are rising and the profits are real, at least on paper, we cannot see what we're part of. We think we're different. We think we're smarter. We think we have better information, better technology, better understanding. We think the old rules don't apply. We think fear is something that happens to other people in other eras. We're wrong. The historical record is clear and consistent. Every major trading bubble follows the same pattern. Rising prices attract attention. Attention attracts participants. Participants drive prices higher. Higher prices justify the attention. The cycle reinforces itself until it can't anymore. Then it breaks. Every time, people are shocked. Every time, experts explain what went wrong. Every time, regulators promise it won't happen again. And every time, it does happen again, because the problem isn't the rules or the regulations or the technology. The problem is fear and how it transforms inside the pressure of trading. In Amsterdam, after the tulip crash, many people blamed the traders themselves. They called them foolish, greedy, reckless, but that misses the point. These weren't stupid people. They were merchants and craftsmen and businessmen who had succeeded in difficult trades and competitive markets. They weren't uniquely greedy. They were humans, responding to incentives and social pressure and opportunity the way humans always respond. The trading environment changed their fear from a protective mechanism into a destructive one. The same thing has happened countless times since. The same thing is happening somewhere right now. There's a particular kind of silence that falls over a market after a crash, a stillness. The frantic energy of trading disappears. The crowds thin. The taverns where men once shouted prices become quiet. In Amsterdam in 1637, that silence must have been deafening. All those contracts, all those promises, all that paper wealth, suddenly revealed as nothing but paper. The fear that had been missing during the bubble, now thick enough to taste. People afraid to leave their homes, afraid to face their creditors, afraid to admit what they'd lost. That silence appears after every crash. After 1929, the trading floors of Wall Street went quiet for years. After 2008, the swagger of the financial industry disappeared overnight. These silent periods are when fear dominates completely, when the pendulum swings too far in the other direction. This fear is different from the healthy caution that should guide trading. This is paralysis. This is trauma. And like all extreme states, it cannot last forever. Eventually, fear recedes again. Trading resumes. The cycle continues. What we never seem to learn is that both extremes are dangerous. Trading without fear leads to bubbles and crashes. Trading with too much fear leads to missed opportunities and stagnation. The balance is nearly impossible to maintain because fear is not a logical calculation. It's an emotion, and emotions are contagious. When you're surrounded by fearless traders making fortunes, your fear evaporates. When you're surrounded by panicked traders losing everything, your fear becomes overwhelming. Maintaining independent judgment in the face of social proof is one of the hardest things humans can do. The technology of trading has changed so much that an Amsterdam tulip trader would not recognize a modern trading terminal. But if you could somehow explain to him what was happening, the human dynamics, the psychology, the fear and greed, he would understand immediately. He would recognize the pattern. He would see himself and his fellow traders in the modern market. The same hope, the same confidence, the same creeping realization that it cannot last. The same denial of that realization. The same sudden collapse. The same devastating aftermath. This recognition should be humbling. 300 years of progress, 300 years of learning, 300 years of regulation and technology and theory, and we still cannot control the basic human emotions that drive trading behavior. We still create bubbles, we still experience crashes, we still let fear transform from protector to destroyer. The pattern is so consistent, so predictable from a historical perspective, yet so invisible to people living through it. Perhaps this is the real lesson. Not that we should avoid trading, but that we should maintain a deep humility about our ability to see clearly while we're inside the market. The fear you feel when everyone around you is confident might be the most valuable thing you possess. The fear you feel when everyone around you is panicking might be the most expensive emotion you experience. But distinguishing between healthy fear and destructive fear, between the fear that protects and the fear that paralyzes, that requires a kind of wisdom that 300 years of history suggests most people never achieve. The tulip bulbs eventually bloomed. Spring came to Amsterdam as it always does. The flowers were beautiful, brilliant colors against dark earth, but nobody cared anymore. They were just flowers. The magic was gone. The trading had revealed them as what they always were, pretty but ultimately ordinary plants. The extraordinary value had existed only in the collective agreement of the traders, and when that agreement broke, the value vanished instantly. This is what trading does. It takes objects, assets, contracts, promises, and assigns them values based on collective belief. When that belief is stable and grounded in something real, trading serves a useful purpose. It allocates capital, discovers prices, enables commerce. But when that belief becomes detached from reality, when the trading itself becomes the point, when the fear of missing out replaces all other considerations, the system becomes dangerous. The danger is not new. The danger is not a function of technology or complexity. The danger is old as markets themselves, old as human nature, old as the fear that has not changed in 300 years. In the quiet of that Amsterdam spring, men who had been wealthy on paper 3 months earlier walked past tulips blooming in gardens and felt nothing but the weight of their debts. They had learned something about fear, about trading, about themselves, but the lesson would not be remembered, could not be remembered, because each new generation of traders must learn it for themselves, must feel the transformation of fear from protector to destroyer, must live through the cycle before they can understand it. And by then, it's too late. The trading has done its work. The fear has completed its transformation. The cycle has turned once more. The only constant is the pattern itself. The details shift. The assets change. The technology evolves. But the fear remains. The same fear that drove tulip traders in 1637 drives every trader who has come after. Not fear of loss, which would be protective. Fear of missing out, which is destructive. Fear of being left behind, of being wrong, of being the fool who didn't see what everyone else saw. That fear has crashed markets and ruined lives and brought down economies for 3 centuries. That fear will continue doing so for as long as humans engage in trading. Because the fear has not changed, and neither have we.